And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here around the world. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. And we're back. Thank you again for joining me. In this week's episode, we'll be talking about several interesting topics, so stay tuned. So, first, we'll be talking about the crisis that's still ongoing in the United States, I guess, around the world with regards to the COVID-19 virus and another strain that's being spread around the world. Now, in particular to the United States, how they're dealing with it, how fast they're trying to combat this by vaccinating every citizen in their nation. Now, what's interesting, despite having the resources and capability, not all citizens are being vaccinated, and obviously, with that in mind, there's has significant repercussions. So we'll take a look at that. Then we have a company, a Norwegian cruise line, is suing Florida for requiring them to having a vaccine passport. So what happened there? Next, we have Apple, the company, who's not only contented in selling you products, but helping you how to pay for it by uh, partnering with a company to be able to pay buy now, pay later concept, which is common in many uh, companies, payment schemes, and so forth. So how this will turn out, we'll talk about that also. Next, we have Walmart's push to fight against, I won't say fight against, but compete with the likes of Amazon by investing heavily on technology, not just in software, but also in mechanical machines by partnering with Symbotic robots. So we'll talk about that. And for local news, we'll be talking about San Miguel's plan to build a hydro power plant first in our country here. And it's going to cost billions of pesos here. And finally, an interesting development. Tag Heuer, one of the popular smartwatches makers in the world, is partnering with the unlikeliest company to create a special limited edition team. So stay tuned what that team would be. Anyway, so as I mentioned, so the U.S. vaccines vaccination rate is you know uh, doing well at the first few months of this year, but currently, as it stands now, there are low vaccine rates in certain states in the United States, in particular in middle states and southern parts. And question is, what's going on there? How come there are low vaccination rates? Are people not believing that the vaccines will work as intended and so forth? And obviously, due to the low vaccination rates, there have been reports that the high case counts has been surging. So, are those two interrelated? Are they correlated, or not related to say the least? Anyway, so according to the article here, CNBC.com, they mentioned that they have a heat map where low vaccination rates meet high case counts as U.S. COVID infections surge. So let's see here. So as mentioned, more and more U.S. counties with low vaccination rate are seeing COVID cases climb, and which is obviously this is never good if you're in the U.S. and living in those particular states, since you'll be everyone's vulnerable, more particular the senior citizens there. And it shows more than almost 500 counties across United States with high rates of infection, which is kind of alarming. And despite them, having high ability, or not high ability, meaning access to vaccines nationwide. It was mentioned in the article that at least 100 new cases over the last week had uh, per 100,000 residents. So that's considered twice the rate compared to other nations, and This is pretty alarming. Obviously, this has major repercussions since if people are not vaccinated and people get infected and then can spread nationwide, and it would affect businesses, which is, some are just coping or barely surviving, trying to manage their businesses to acceptable rate. And then there's the Delta variant that's, spreading worldwide. Anyway, so let's take a look at the low vaccine rates here. So here you go. So you can see here. So you have the United States map here, and the gray area is where 40% or over 40% are vaccinated or below case count threshold. Now the orange shaded portion here have low vaccination rate and had an elevated case count. Now, as you can clearly see here, it's grouped primarily here in the middle states here. You have Missouri, you have Arkansas, you have Louisiana, and parts of Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, you have Mojave in Arizona, then Clark in Nevada. And then, dispersed parts in Montana, Idaho, Oregon, and even in Washington. Very few in California, practically none in the Dakota region, whether in the south, as well as in Nebraska, even in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, some of the northern states. There's very few cases, and you can see here it's bunched up here somewhere in the middle and southern region, all the way up to Florida here. And one would wonder what are the causes here or reasons behind why those states are having a low vaccination rate, and obviously it goes back whether access is available for the citizens, or the citizens are apprehensive of using certain vaccinations, or or being vaccinated in general. And here in our country, you're given two choices here: vaccinated from that was made in China, I think that's Sinovac. Then you have Pfizer, which is made from another country, and so forth. So more than half of counties in Missouri, as mentioned, Arkansas, Louisiana, have very low vaccination rate, which I think you know, could be the key or the cause of elevated cases in different parts of those states. Now, the question is, what will the government do? Obviously, has to two things has to happen. The citizen has to cooperate, and the government has to push hard, not necessarily force them, but encourage them, create awareness so that people are aware that obviously it's not just for your benefit, but to have some peace of mind for your family and loved ones, thinking that not being vaccinated is the best case. And especially nowadays in many major sporting events, you have baseball, who recently had the All-Star weekend, and then now the NBA Finals. And congratulations to the Milwaukee Bucks for winning game four. And you can see lots of people are congregating, and you can just imagine if some of those people were not vaccinated, and those people who were infected could easily spread the virus quickly, since businesses are trying to push people to resume their normal activities. And this is kind of alarming, and many people have this sense of complacency, that thinking that they have gotten vaccinated, some are not, it's okay. So it's a double-edged sword that you have to take a closer look at this one seriously. And as mentioned here, the COVID vaccines currently being used are proving to be successful, as seen in the chart here. You can see many states have I won't say no cases, but not to a level that is alarming. And it just goes to show that it does prevent from severe disease, not necessarily from the COVID strain itself. So at least you don't get those critical conditions that were happening, that was prevalent last year. Obviously, you want prevention rather than waiting for it to occur, then dealing with it, being hospitalized, which is depleting your resources, especially for the nurses, doctors, and even the equipments that you need for combating against the virus. And now you have to deal with the new variant, as mentioned, the Delta variant. So, will the vaccine be enough to combat it, or do you need another vaccination, and so forth? But still, at the end of the day, the key question here is, how do you raise awareness so that everyone is aware, so that everyone can be responsible in taking care not just for themselves but also for their family. That they should recommend, that would it be better to take the vaccine rather than not take the vaccine and so forth. Actually, you can see here they have a chart where their daily vaccine doses reported, which was tremendous at the start of the year, and it faltered later this month up to the present. So let's see here. There you go. So here you can see the vaccine rate at the start of January. So it was increasing from 1 million to 2 million at the peak of 3 million doses way back in somewhere mid-April and early May. And then it went down for the day, the average here, where it stands right now to just a little over a million doses. Now, that number is not good if you're in the United States, but I'd like that number here in our country any day so that everyone is vaccinated, so we can have some peace of mind, so we can go back to some normalcy here. But the question here is, what is the United States government supposed to do now? Since yeah, I think I get the feeling that people in those states that have low vaccine rates have this complacency, thinking that they don't need the vaccine because other people have already been vaccinated. So there's a big task for the government, for President Joe Biden, to do something about it and quickly before things go out of hand. We don't want another repeat of what happened last year. If the U.S. is any indicator, other countries would have a detrimental effect because business are still not at at peak capacity, so to speak. They're still recuperating and so forth. And what's interesting here, there are some 1,600 counties across 40 states with 72 million residents have vaccinated with less than 40% of their population. So there are some states here that we showed are not available, whether they didn't want to show it or they didn't have access. So it doesn't give you a complete picture, but still, it's better than none. And obviously, it gives you some concern because if you're not healthy, you're sick. How can you run a business, or how can businesses, resume to their normalcy by asking consumers to buy their products or even services here? And unless the government can address this initial problem, businesses cannot go back to normal operations here. Anyway, speaking of restrictions, so a cruise line company, the Norwegian cruise line in particular, is suing Florida, the state of Florida, regarding the requirement from Surgeon General to require a vaccine passport ban. Now, obviously, if cruise liners are transporting people from many places, obviously in your particular state, in this case Florida, are considering how to protect your citizens by requiring proof of vaccination here. Now, what's interesting here, the cruise line here is asking that they shouldn't be required because many of them have followed stringent protocols and measures to ensure that they are within health regulations. But the question is, there's no standardized regulation for nationwide and even worldwide. So that's kind of concerning here. Anyway, so let's see here. So as mentioned here, the Norwegian cruise line filed a lawsuit against the Norwegian Florida Surgeon General because they are preventing businesses from requiring customers to show proof of COVID-19 vaccination. Now, obviously, many businesses, like in this case, the cruise liner has resumed their voyage in terms of sailing to different cities across different nations. Obviously, you are required to have health and safety protocols, and they have developed one with the guidance of the CDC, or the Center of Disease Control and Prevention. But the question is it enough for the Florida to change their policy here? And obviously, there is significant repercussions if this were to be still the case. And the Norwegian company is stating that it would be forced to cancel upcoming cruises. And obviously, if they were to cancel that, people who've already booked have, I don't know if they're exaggerating, devastating, unrecoverable losses. But the question is, should have they been, voyaging in this turbulent period? Now you could go either way. Obviously, for businesses, they need to survive. For governments, they need to protect their citizens. Now, which should trumps which? Obviously, it's a very delicate scenario here. I understand what businesses like the Norwegian cruise line is considering, but obviously, if you're, let's say, going from one nation to another, stopping from one city to another, and you bring people in on board and then transfer them, it's a recipe for disaster if those people are not vaccinated and they have the virus, and it could easily spread quickly. Similar how it started, last year, when there were reports in a cruise line that was going to Japan, and they were held at bay and they were stuck in their cruise ship for several weeks, I think, or even months. So it's not a good experience if you're one of those passengers experiencing that ordeal. The question here is on the other side is for the government, how can they find some middle ground? Is there a way to test them or verify the validity of their vaccines and so forth? So unless they find a compromise here, I don't think the cruise liner here or any cruise liner here. Obviously, it's not just the Norwegian are in this line of business. I think they want Carnival in Florida as well. So how can they accommodate? And typically, cruise liners accommodate or significant of their passengers are retirees, senior citizens. So you can just imagine the concern if you're in that age range and then you're supposed to board a ship, then you're required to take vaccines. Obviously, some would do it gladly, and based on what we discussed earlier, some are apprehensive still. So it's still not a conclusive idea or solution that, is everyone being vaccinated and how fast can everyone be vaccinated? So it's still an ongoing debate, as to which would win here. And finally, Norwegian is claiming that the law violates their First Amendment by blocking communications between a business and its customer. Now, how the judge will look at that, I'm no lawyer here, but Norwegian is making a claim here. But still, at the end of the day, the government's role is to protect the interests of the citizen. And if you're getting people from different parts of the world coming into your country, you don't know if they're vaccinated or not, safe or not safe. It creates a lot of kind of worms if you let it, let it slip, and then you could just imagine the movie Outbreak, how fast it could spread quickly, which is not an ideal, and no one wants to deal with that again. I mean, based on last year's experience. And what's interesting here, as mentioned earlier, the profile outbreaks on ships can be tremendous, and no one wants that a repeat case here, especially in confined spaces. That's why people were barred from congregating in major sporting events or any events that you have a lot of people. But now in the United States, they have resumed their normal activities, but obviously that's within their territory. But people coming from different parts of the world going in and out, you know, raises a lot of concerns here. Now you also have Royal Caribbean cruises and Carnival cruises I mentioned, and they've also resumed their sailings out from Florida. Question is, will they be required to have passengers that have been vaccinated, or will they allow unvaccinated passengers to just follow certain safety protocols and be allowed to board? But the question is, will they be allowed to go to visit different cities once they reach their destinations there? So obviously, they mentioned that having travel insurance is required. So I think that would be required now. But still, would you take the risk now for business? Obviously, because you need the money. But for any countries, any city that's thinking of accepting tourists in your city, is it worth the pain of the possible revenue it generates for tourism, but having the headache if they are carrier of the virus? No one wants that idea here. Anyway, what's interesting, the demand for the cruise liners, in particular for the Norwegian cruise line, has been returning in recent months. So obviously, people have been cooped up for, I don't know, for an entire year or even more. So everybody wants to, travel again, different places, and you know, it will go back to its normal demand at a certain point. But safety is always the main concern here, and either I or any sane person would, not justify risking their lives just to travel and then get infected somewhere along the way. So we have to wait and see what happens, and I'll update everyone. Anyway, continuing with our next story. So we have Apple, the tech giant that we love, know and love, is launching a new app in partnership with Goldman Sachs here, according to BusinessInsider.com. So they're teaming up so that they can offer a better service, a faster service that makes sense for Apple, the company. Now, obviously, Apple is known for selling smartphone devices that caters to their key customers in their ecosystem, selling smartphones, smartwatches, tablets, laptops, and even desktops and whatnots, right? The goal here, I'm assuming, is so that to make it easier for you to purchase. Now, obviously, no, as their as their products continue to rise, becoming more expensive, and obviously they've thought of this carefully. How can they help their customers buy their Apple products quickly? And obviously, normally you'd normally pay with cash, but you know, nowadays who's using cash? In their case, they're using credit cards to pay those products, and making it even more easier is what's interesting here. So they're encouraging you to buy your products now and pay later. Now that's a misnomer here, because it's a trap of sorts, so that you think that you don't have to pay your purchase item right now, but you forget that later on you're supposed to pay for it. The question here every responsible citizen should be thinking is, can you afford it? Not just because you can pay it later, is do you keep on buying items that you don't need, or items that you can't afford to buy? And this has a stink of marketing strategy that obviously, if you are able to pay your bills on time, just like your credit card bills, then you're okay. But the problem here is, the trap here is, if you don't pay it within the time frame, you'll be charged a substantial interest fee, which obviously why Goldman Sachs is interested to partner with Apple here. And obviously, to make it easier for Apple consumers, the Apple Pay Later will be available obviously in all Apple devices and via the Wallet app, which is owned by Apple here, the App Store here. So obviously it makes sense for a business standpoint, if you're Apple here, to integrate fully from the customer experience, buying the item, to purchasing it and paying it using the app, and even the payment scheme here. And obviously, in this one, they mentioned that you are given two options here. Let's see here, where was it? There you go. So you're given two options here. Where was it? Yeah, here. So the first option mentioned is the Apple Pay in 4, meaning you pay in 4 interest-free payments. So the catch here is, you only pay for it in 4 interest-free payments. Now, if you don't pay it within the time frame, guess how much are they going to charge for that one? So be aware of that. And you made the payments every 2 weeks. So I don't know if that's interesting. So technically, I'd rather pay. So it's 2 months. So it's like paying it 3 month interest, a 3 month installment payment scheme. Then they have another one. The second is the Apple Pay monthly installments, which splits the payments over several months with interest, and could last up to 24 months, to say the least. Now, obviously, that's not anything new in terms of charging their consumer. Actually, credit cards have been doing that for several years already, wherein they would, I think BDO offers that, pay now, buy now, pay later. I used to have BDO card before. You don't have to pay, I think, first 2 months before it would reflect in your credit card billings, and then they charge you for the next 3 months, I think, or 6 months. So it would look like you're paying 6 months interest, but technically you're only paying for the next 4 months or so. So obviously that's enticing if you're a consumer than thinking of when to pay the purchase item here. But again, the trap here is, if you're not responsible, if you think you can't afford it and you bought it with your card, the interest will pile up pretty quickly. And I've heard from stories, I know from someone who had this terrible experience where their interest, is went uh, exorbitantly high amount, higher than the upfront purchase from the item that they bought in the first place here. So is it make sense for consumers to apply this? Well, if you're responsible enough, then it would make sense. I think obviously technology is always better if you know how to use it properly, and obviously to make it more easier, smoother in terms of rather than using your card going to the store, you can now use your mobile phone to just click away and then buy the item and then be delivered to your homes now. So again, word of caution: be careful. And what's interesting, Goldman Sachs and Apple's partnership has already begun way back in 2019 with the Apple credit card, if you remember. So now they're integrating the whole ecosystem, right? From buying the item to actually using the payment system, and now using the intermediary, the financial institutions, in this case, using Goldman Sachs as the go-between here. So obviously, they want you to buy your products where they charge a large amount, so they generate a lot of a lot of revenue. Then you use the app for paying it again with another additional fee using your credit card, Apple credit card. Again, they have another cut here. So you just notice in those three instances, three channels, Apple gets a cut in all of those. And obviously, kudos for them for thinking like that. Question is, how secure is it? Obviously, they've been promoting the how secure their platform is. But again, caution is to all users who are using it: be responsible in your purchases. Don't overdo it if you don't have the resources to pay for it later on. And what's interesting, Apple Card holders can already make their payments over time, as mentioned. So it's not just in a few months' time. If you buy a very expensive iPhone, you can pay it for 24 months. So that's 2 years of payment. Typically, this is incorporated in lines if you are subscribed to a telecoms, whether Globe, Smart, or Verizon, or T-Mobile in the United States here. And obviously, what their goal here for Apple anyway is to make sure that you use all of their services here. Now, if it makes sense for you, makes it more convenient, then go for it. No harm there. Anyway, next we have, again, so using technology to improve your operations and maximize your profitability or even generating revenue here. We have Walmart, one of the biggest retailers in the United States, and some would say around the world, in terms of using technology here, not just software, as I mentioned earlier, but mechanical machines to optimize the production, or in this case, in their warehouse distribution centers. Now, obviously, they used to rely on humans to do the job, but obviously there are limitations, and with what's happening with Amazon's people, rising up, forming unions. Well, that was didn't fall through. But either way, it's hard to manage people in the long run, and saving on cost, not having to pay your health insurance and whatnots by using machines here. Well, Walmart is thinking the same ways in order to compete with the likes of Amazon here. So they're investing on Symbotic robots by installing different robots to optimize their distribution center, as much as 25 distribution centers nationwide. According to TechCrunch.com, they mentioned that embracing in automation is one of their key goals for the foreseeable future. Obviously, to be remain competitive is one, but also to reduce inefficiencies in their processes here. And obviously, with the current situation, the pandemic, citing labor shortages is another problem. And obviously, being able to deliver the goods by your consumers as fast as possible is important. So how do you find the middle ground or find a better solution? Here comes technology, obviously using robotics to replace certain uh, human work or skills. In this case, they're partnering with a Massachusetts based automation company named Symbotic. So their goal is to bring in robotics to its 25 regional Walmart distribution centers, so that it can optimize, improve their efficiencies, technically reducing their cost actually. Now the concerns here obviously is, if you fully automate your operation in the distribution centers, what will happen to your employees here? Will they be out of a job? And that's obviously the conundrum here. If your employee there has been working for several years, whether in Amazon or even in Walmart, and eventually it's a matter of time. Well, actually, they're implementing it now. It's a matter of time if, and no, not if, it's a matter of when those people will be relieved of their jobs, and what will be they doing. So question is, are there any solutions to this problem? Obviously, for Walmart, I would say they couldn't care less, but their goal is to minimize cost but maximize profitability here in any shape or form. Now, obviously, at the expense of human capital here. Question is, what can the government do now? Are there any alternative options for those people who will be out of a job? So it's not just distribution centers, eventually, even the taxi service. Well, not anytime soon, but there are many industries or service industries that they've been trying to replace human resources with automation here. So it's just a matter of time, of when, maybe within our lifetime, who knows. Question is, how will this affect the interaction, the societal effect of people here? Obviously, would people be envious, regretful, combative in terms of the robots are our enemy now, similar to what movies you're seeing like in Terminator or even in The Matrix and so forth. Anyway, so the pilot, as mentioned here, was started way back in 2017 with its autonomous platform way back in Brooksville, Florida. So obviously their goal is to build increased freight sorting capability, stocking, and unloading. So the faster you can move, transfer inventories, restock them, and so forth without any incidents. Obviously, a machine doesn't have to take a break, but still you need people to manage it. But again, at a reduced capacity in your warehouses, so you'd see automation robots moving left and right, front and back quickly by ordering, by punching in a code, and it will get the pallet and then move it here, and you know it looks tremendous. But but for those people who would be out of a job, what are the options? Should they look for another job? Should they look to train themselves to look for a better, where their skills would be needed and so forth? And according to Walmart's Joe Metzger, I hope I'm pronouncing his name, he mentions that the digital transformation is happening today alongside evolving customer habits in reshaping the retail industry. Now, obviously, people has been, I would say, have changed tremendously since last year compared to this year or even previous years, where people are now more accustomed to purchasing items on even is a testament to that. But will that be the long term here? Obviously, if it's convenient, then demands will always continue to go even higher. And the question is, can those companies like Walmart, Amazon, even Lazada, or even Shopee can keep up with the demands of their consumers? And obviously, technology is a solution to be able to combat that. But how do you manage the backlash of having to lay off people in the future? Anyway, the goal here is, according to them, is to serve customers now and in the future, and our business must provide the right tools and training to our associates so they can deliver the items our customers want when they want them with unmatched convenience. Now, obviously, they're saying the right words to meet the demands of your consumers, but there will always be a con to this aspect, meaning trusting technology for your operations with less manpower here. And I like technology, but question is, what will happen 10, 20, or even 50 years from now with more businesses adopting automation here? So we'll see. Anyway, for some local news, as mentioned earlier, San Miguel, the big corporation here in our country, is building a hydro plant in Aklan, according to businessmirror.com. Now, when I first read this article, I was interested. Obviously, transitioning for coal, for getting our resources here, for everything that we do here in our country. Actually, not just in our country, but many countries have been reliant on coal, which is not very environmentally friendly. So finding alternatives is a key considerations here. Now, obviously, it needs a lot of investment, as according to the article, it's going to cost them a little north of $26 billion here. Pesos, sorry, not dollars. And it's going to be developed by the Strategic Power Development Corporation, or SPDC, which is interestingly enough, a subsidiary of the San Miguel Corporation, or San Miguel Corporation Global Power Holdings, that they're calling it. So the goal here is to build a 300 megawatt structure or hydropower facility in Malay, Aklan. So obviously the goal here is to cover a portion of renewable energy requirement in the Visayas region, particularly in peak hours. Now obviously, with our growing population, rising demand in electricity, with other utilities as well, you have to find resources. And for our electricity, we considered using nuclear power plant, which is, Chernobyl, Fukushima. Those are developed nations who dabbled into that, and have to live with the consequences if done improperly. I don't think we can handle that catastrophe. So we have to look at other means of resources, and renewable, actually. And we have several options here, from the hydro, using water, and using air is another, and using solar is another, should be considered here. And actually, the company San Miguel is considering that as well. Now the mention is, the project is designed to generate electricity during peak period. Obviously, we're still encountering, actually last week I encountered several blackouts in opportune times, some in the wee mornings and some in the early mornings, and then after a few hours power would resume, whether it's a maintenance issue or so forth. But anyway, so with the hydro facility being implemented, so what's interesting here is it pumps back water used during off-peak period through a reversible pump turbine, so it won't be wasted. So it can be renewable, it can be reused over time here, which is, kind of interesting once it's implemented already. And the construction for the pump storage plant will take 4 years and 5 months. So is the 4 years typical to our construction here in the country? Hopefully, it's being expedited. Anyway, and it has starting the site installation later in the first quarter of 2022, which is next year. So the project is pretty vast if you look at it. So it covers an area of a little over 122 hectares. So it needs all that area to be able to accomplish the infrastructure there. And according to the SPDC, they mentions the barangay and municipality will directly benefit from the project through additional financial resources provided by the development. Now, one thing to note here, obviously, if you're going to develop lands, particularly in any region, in any country, or in any barangay and municipality, is the environmental aspect of it. Obviously, you cannot just dug up lands and, excavate, or even, put up dams left and right, because there's an ecosystem in those particular areas. Did the government survey and find out, is it okay to develop those infrastructures in those areas? Because there will always be unintended consequences that we may not see right now, but years later, after it's finished, can be a, disastrous endeavor. And as you can see, in I think somewhere in China, when they made is it the Gorgeous Dam? I forgot which dam they made. They had to erect those dams, and the livelihood of many citizens in low-lying areas were scrapped. They had to move, or they were forced to move, and the many livelihoods of many people has to be taken into account, not just for the many, but also the few who have been living there for several years or even decades. And what's interesting, they're also focusing on putting up solar plants combined with battery storages facilities across 10 locations nationwide. And their goal is to make it operational by 2023. So hydro is good, solar is good, but I think it makes sense for our country to adopt solar technology, but the cost is still high, and the implementation, I don't know, has reached to that level. I've read similar to how Tesla, the company, is into the solar business also, but hasn't been doing well because they'll be charging exorbitant amount to just for implementing or installing solar panels in your rooftop. But anyway, according to the San Miguel Corporation President, Mr. Ramon Ang, he stated that they are executing plans to move away from building new coal facilities, which is not environmentally friendly, despite new technologies that make them cleaner. Obviously, you can only what do you call this filtrate them up to a certain level, like combustible engine like diesel and gas, right? Diesel, they use this certain filter to make it less toxic, but there's still toxic coming out either way, right? So their company, or it's a company's direction that is in line with all the major sustainability initiatives we have undertaken this past couple of years. Now, obviously, you need government support here, that being pushing environmental concerns, but we have other major concerns here, not just energy crisis here, but poverty, education, all of those goody stuff that the government has to take account to. But it's a step in the right direction. Obviously, new projects, new possibilities by employing a lot of people, generate a lot of jobs, and obviously, uh, the corporation here, San Miguel, will earn a substantial fee here by producing this project for the masses here. Anyway, finally, for our last story. So, speaking of Tag Heuer, we were talking about it. So, they're known as a smartphone, a watchmaker here worldwide or globally, right? What's interesting, they've been partnering with a very unlikely company, Nintendo of all companies. So, they'll be marketing a limited edition. Guess what's their showcase that they're going to focus here? It's Mr. Super Mario here. So Tag Heuer has and Nintendo has announced their partnership, the Tag Heuer Connected Super Mario Limited Edition Smartwatch. Now, how excited are you? Whether you're a Tag Heuer fan or even a Super Mario fan, I don't know if it's a good tandem here. The fact that Tag Heuer is a very expensive watch. Well, Mario, I won't say is it expensive. Yeah, up to a certain point, but let's see here. Anyway, so if you can see here, Tag Heuer's website is counting down to the time when they will release it by June 15th, which is next month already. Has already released it actually. Sorry. Let's see if can we see it. Anyway, so the specs for the 2020 watch is a 45 millimeter watch, which is somewhat big, not considered small. They have a Snapdragon Wear 3100 SoC, which is kind of outdated. It has a 1 gig of RAM, 8 gigs of storage, a little over 1 inch of screen, OLED, but it's pretty small, so it's bright enough, and it has a 430 milliamp battery. So it has your typical Wi-Fi, NFC, GPS, water resistant, and heat rate sensor. Now, is it interesting? Would you buy this watch here? Anyway, let's let's take a closer look here. So it looks nice here, if you notice, right? It looks with its box. I think the strap is made of rubber material and so forth. But who are they targeting this watch? I'm just curious. Is it kids, adults? Why would an adult buy a Super Mario team watch? And I think that the price that they mentioned is around $2,000. So almost 100,000. Could have bought, you know, another brand more luxurious in terms of design. I don't know. See, if you look at it, it has Mario in your screen. Imagine if you're in your workplace, you have this watch, and then they can see Mario is in your screen. It looks like a kiddie watch rather than an adult's watch here. And it has different designs as you can see here. I think I'm more liking the second here. And the third and fourth one, eh, something something to be desired. Now, in terms of its material and steel body watch, obviously it's a Tag Heuer steel, so it's super hard with sapphire touchscreen. So it's still a Tag Heuer nonetheless, and they made 4 exclusive maritime as you saw earlier here. But the question here is, who are they targeting this for? Anyway, let's see the video. I think they have the video. Yeah, there you go. So they're expecting regular consumers to wear this for everyday use, right? Is it a sport watch? Is it a casual watch? If it's a casual watch, I would rather prefer have a G-Shock watch for everyday use. Use. But obviously, I'm a fan of Mario. I like the idea, but for a kid's watch, it would make much more sense rather than making it a premium watch. Is Nintendo thinking that partnering with Tag Heuer will make their brand more premium than usual? So every time if it's an alarm, Mario would say something, or Peach will say something, or like this one. So I'm confused. To whom are they targeting this product? It's kind of surprising and kind of odd if you think about it. But yeah, it is what it is. And another issue that the watch they're facing is the old technology that they're using. So by the time you buy this, there'll be improvement iteration of the SoC chip here, which Samsung is trying to push. I think later this year or sometime next. That's Samsung is pushing sometime next year. So by then, your watch that you bought here this year will be outdated already, and it's 2,000 bucks. It's not cheap. But still, I think people are going to buy it since it's limited. I think I'm all for better for it. So they're also releasing only 2,000 units now. 2,000 units. Is it going to be hotcakes by the time it goes online? I don't know. Maybe I'll take a pass on this one. I'd rather buy a Switch console rather than a Nintendo Watch, a Tag Heuer Nintendo Super Mario Watch at that. Anyway, what do you think? Would you consider buying this one? I'm very apprehensive about it. Anyway, that concludes our live stream for today. By the way, you might be interested in catching clips of today's segments by watching my other channel, Business Focus Live Clips. I leave in the link in the description below so you can check it out. Also, you can leave your comments down below if you have questions, as well as if you want to read the full article. The link is in the description below as well. So thanks again for watching. For more business news, choose Business Focus. As always, I'll see you again next week, same time, same channel. Take care and stay safe.